Lloyd Fernandez Avery II was born on June 21, 1969, in Los Angeles, California. Unlike the usual picture people have of young black guys growing up in poverty and violence in South Central, Lloyd came from a solid middle-class family, living large in View Park near Baldwin Hills, a spot nicknamed the Black Beverly Hills for good reason, with all the wealth and success of its black community. His dad, Lloyd Avery Sr., wasn't just some handyman. He was a jack of all trades, electrician, plumber, carpenter, running his own business like a boss. His mom, Linda, held it down at the bank, making sure the family had a cushy home. In a family of 4 kids, Lloyd stood out as the one with a big personality, sharp as a tack, but with some rough edges. His childhood was spent in a house with a pool in the backyard, never wanting for anything. That's why what happened later is so hard to wrap your head around. How does a guy who had it all go chasing validation in the darkest corners? As a teenager, Lloyd went to Beverly Hills High, the kind of fancy school where Hollywood kids roll up. His classmates included Smokey Robinson Jr., son of the music legend, and kids of Quincy Jones and Clarence Avant. At school, Lloyd played baseball and water polo, always seen as the active, athletic dude with charisma. People remember him as a guy with a knack for cracking jokes and winning folks over, but he also had a slick side, always pushing buttons and testing limits. There's this one story from a photo shoot where comedian Robin Harris straight up choked Lloyd out because of his smart mouth antics. That moment showed both his bold streak and a hint of the trouble he'd stir up early on, little flashes warning of the clashes he'd have with the world. The real trouble started popping off in 1988. At a UCLA frat party, Lloyd got arrested for carrying a fake ID during a scuffle where shots were fired. He didn't pull the trigger, but he got locked up for 3 days. The crazy part? He wasn't shaken. He actually got a kick out of it, like he was hyped about the whole jail experience. To his friends, that raised red flags, like maybe Lloyd was getting a thrill from danger. 2 years later, in 1990, he got caught up again, this time for stealing studio gear from Guitar Center. His dad wanted him to get a steady job, but Lloyd was obsessed with the glitz and glamour of Hollywood, convinced that's where he belonged. And then, in 1991, his big break came. John Singleton, an old buddy who was making waves as a young director, cast Lloyd in a small role in Boyz in the Hood. That movie became a landmark, showing the raw reality of life for young black guys in South Central Los Angeles. Lloyd played a Bloods gang member, showing up in that gut punch scene where he guns down Ricky, played by Morris Chestnut, while Ricky's running down the street, a moment that stuck with audiences for decades. Even though he was only on screen for a few minutes, Lloyd in that red Hyundai, cold-bloodedly pulling the trigger, became a pop culture icon. On the streets, people started calling him the dude who killed Ricky. Instead of brushing it off as just a role, Lloyd started to lean into that gangster image. That blurring of lines between acting and reality set the stage for his downward spiral. After Boyz in the Hood, Lloyd snagged a few more gigs, popping up in Doogie Howser, MD in 1992, Poetic Justice in 1993, alongside Janet Jackson and Tupac Shakur, and even helping produce a track for Tisha Campbell in the sitcom Martin. But the Hollywood shine didn't last long. Word is, Lloyd was showing up late, blowing off auditions, and even acting hostile on set. His relationship with Singleton fell apart, and with that, the doors to Hollywood started slamming shut. For a guy who tasted the spotlight, getting shut out hit hard. That's when Lloyd made a sharp turn into a different life. The life of a real-deal gangster. He moved to Baldwin Village, a rough South Central spot called The Jungle, where the Black P. Stones, a Bloods faction, ran things. He didn't just join the gang. He went all in, tattooing jungles across his forehead, a loud and clear statement that he'd chosen the streets over the screen. From actor to straight-up gangbanger, Lloyd transformed. He rocked the red gear that screamed Bloods, carried a gun everywhere. On movie sets, he'd threatened directors, showing up strapped with a real piece. Out in the world, he got into petty crimes, stealing bikes, cars, and acting wild, like pepper spraying his old roommate's mum, who used to be his agent, or even spraying MTV VJ downtown Julie Brown for no reason. People close to him started thinking he was battling something deeper, maybe bipolar disorder or some kind of mental breakdown. Every now and then, he'd show up at church, but he'd feel out of place, torn between faith and the darkness of the gang life. That inner conflict hit a breaking point on July 1st, 1999. At Santa Barbara Plaza, Lloyd allegedly opened fire on Annette Lewis and Percy Branch after some kind of argument. Annette took 5 shots to the back and died on the spot, while Percy was hit bad in the stomach and thigh. Lloyd peeled out in his black Cadillac, a car that matched descriptions from other unsolved shootings in the area. Here's the wild part. After the shooting, Lloyd didn't skip town or lay low. 2 weeks later, he was on the set of Lockdown in New Mexico, acting like nothing happened. But he got kicked off that set too for acting erratic, smoking PCP, beefing with crew, and even wandering into a restricted part of the prison where they were filming. After the Santa Barbara Plaza shooting, the cops had Lloyd in their sights as the prime suspect. But he kept moving like he was untouchable, even heading back to film sets as if nothing was wrong. That boldness, or delusion, only dug him in deeper. By December 1999, it all came crashing down when his old roommate, Sean Spreer, turned on him and started working with the police. Thanks to Sean's tip, the cops had what they needed to move in. On December 8th, 1999, they caught Lloyd after a short car chase. In his house in that black Cadillac, they found a .45 caliber handgun, the same kind used in the Santa Barbara Plaza killings. That was the nail in the coffin. The guy who once played a killer on screen was now facing real murder charges, with his life on the line. The trial in 2000 got a lot of attention in LA. The idea of a guy known for killing Ricky now on trial for actual murder shocked everyone. But during the whole process, Lloyd didn't put up much of a fight. He seemed detached, almost checked out, barely speaking up or offering a solid defense. The jury found him guilty on 2 counts of first-degree murder. The sentence? Life without parole. A one-way ticket with no way back. When the cell door slammed shut, something unexpected happened. Lloyd turned to religion. While waiting in LA County Jail to be transferred to Pelican Bay, he started attending services led by Pastor Dennis Clark. Other inmates saw him carrying a Bible everywhere, preaching about salvation. They started calling him Baby Jesus. Some thought it was just a way to cope with prison life, but Lloyd seemed serious. He got baptized, wrote letters home asking for forgiveness, and talked about turning his life around. By 2001, he was shipped off to Pelican Bay State Prison, one of the toughest supermax joints in the country, up near the Oregon border. It's a place built for hardcore lifers and gang shot callers. Even there, Lloyd kept his faith, stayed out of trouble, and tried to help other inmates find their way. But the story took a dark turn in 2005 when they put him in a cell with Kevin Roby, a straight-up dangerous dude. Roby was doing life for killing his own sister, and had a rap sheet that included sexual assault and a diagnosis of paranoid schizophrenia. He called himself the Satanic Christ and was deep into some dark ritualistic beliefs. Putting him with Lloyd was a disaster waiting to happen. At first, Lloyd tried to save Robbie's soul, preaching the Bible and talking forgiveness. But that only lit a fuse. To Robbie, Lloyd's preaching was an insult, a challenge to his twisted power. Things got heated in that cell, building up to a breaking point. On September 4th, 2005, it all went down in cell D247. Roby snapped, hitting Lloyd with something heavy, then choking him out. But it didn't end there. For 38 hours, Robbie kept up a sick charade, pretending Lloyd was still alive by tying a string to his arm and moving it during head counts. Inside that blood-soaked cell, Robbie drew a pentagram and demonic symbols on the walls with Lloyd's blood, calling it a sacrifice to his satanic Christ. On September 6th, the guards finally figured it out and found Lloyd's body in a scene straight out of a horror flick. Roby didn't even blink, admitting he'd planned it as a ritual offering. But since he was already serving life without parole, the Del Norte County DA didn't bother charging him with another murder. To them, Roby was already locked away for good. So what was the point? Lloyd's death hit like a shockwave. From a kid raised in the Black Beverly Hills to getting sacrificed in a prison cell by a satanic wannabe, his story felt like a modern Greek tragedy, with fate dragging him to the edge. After he passed, podcasts, true crime docs, and YouTube videos started picking apart his life, trying to figure out how a guy with so much promise ended up like this. Some said it was because he got too deep into his Boyz and the Hood role, blurring the line between acting and real life. Others pointed to mental health issues, like maybe undiagnosed bipolar disorder. Some just said his pride and ego wouldn't let him settle for a regular life, pushing him to chase fame in all the wrong ways. His family and old friends, though heartbroken, remembered him as a guy with talent and charm who just lost his way. To them, his story was a warning about how thin the line is between art and reality, and how dangerous it can be when you let a role define you. Hollywood gave Lloyd a stage, but it also set a trap, glorifying the gangster life without helping him navigate the fallout. In the end, Lloyd Avery II's life wasn't just a cautionary tale for actors. It was a wake-up call for society. It makes you think twice about how we glorify violence, and how Hollywood tells stories about communities without always supporting the people in them. If we're not careful, more stories like Lloyd's will keep happening. People lost in the blurry space between fiction and reality. To most, he'll always be the guy who killed Ricky on screen. But to those who followed his whole story, that's just the tip of a tragic iceberg. Behind it is a kid with big dreams, a broken family, and a society that let him slip through the cracks without a lifeline. Maybe the real haunting part is this. Lloyd wasn't born to be a killer. He became one. Because of art. Because of a twisted need for validation. And because of choices that couldn't be undone.